Are we
We're
live?
live, yeah.
That's great.
Have we got anybody watching? Hello.
Is anybody here?
There are
Can anybody hear us?
24 people.
Oh,
So
good.
hopefully you can hear us and see us. This is Maitreyabandhu,
Okay.
and I'm Jnanavaca. We're just finishing setting up.
Have you tuned in before, any of you that are here so far?
Say where you're from
Say
as
where
well,
you're from and tell us if you tuned in before.
and who
to
you
this.
are, what your name is, why you're here, and
Why
anything
we're
else you
here.
want to say. Be nice to hear from
This
you.
is where we do sort of chatting before we start,
Seb and Hippolyte, who we also live with.
who we'll introduce in a moment. Do we do that still?
Yeah, we'll introduce them.
Yeah, just briefly.
Yeah.
Nice people.
Seb and Hippolyte are nice people. Yeah, they're doing technical things. And so who's here?
So
Yeah.
we have Graham from Trieste in North Italy.
Graham
Wow,
from
hello, Graham.
Trieste. Wow.
I've always
welcome.
wanted to go to Trieste.
North
It's
Italy.
very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. I
Phil
hope you're-
Smith from Ipswich.
Phil, hello Phil. Hi.
Todd Johnson.
Todd.
Todd.
Welcome Todd.
Nice to see. Well, nice to see you.
Well,
nice to
we-
know that you're all seeing
yeah,
us.
Anne
Phil's
Ferris
Rod.
Anne,
from
hello
West
Anne.
Wales.
Anne, sorry, who?
West Wales. Annie.
Annie.
Annie
Yeah.
Ferris.
Yeah,
Ian
hi.
Roberts from the Peak District.
Oh, hello.
Wow.
yeah.
Oh, God. Well, that's
We've got a
all
bit of a
over the place.
range, haven't we?
That's great.
Sun Yang.
Sun Yan.
Those are the words.
Uh-huh. Hello Sun Yan.
And David from Mexico City, David Chavez.
Oh,
Wow,
wow.
that's great.
David from
Fantastic.
Mexico. That's great.
Tracy Seagroat from Mid-Essex.
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah.
Hello Tracy. Nice to see
So thank you very
that
much.
you're here. That's sweet.
Francesca Santoro
Francesca.
from Rome.
Hello,
Wow.
Francesca. Wow, two Italian.
Were you with us last night for the puja, Francesca? Because there was someone from Rome yesterday night, wasn't there?
Well, lots of people in Rome.
I know there is, but there was somebody tuning in. I know that.
Jenny Calcine from California.
Oh, great.
Oh, wow.
Fantastic.
Lovely to see you. Oh, and Francesca and our friend from Trieste says yes, they were.
Oh, wonderful.
yeah, so
So
good.
you're becoming regulars.
So that's
really
interesting,
good.
'cause
That's really good.
Some people are starting to sort of regularly tune in,
Yeah.
so...
All the Londoners have left us.
Yes,
obviously.
that's right. But not a person from Bethnal Green yet.
That's right.
We've had who we have?
Oh no, Todd was from London.
Oh, yeah, Todd was from...
Graham Parker from Exotic Croydon.
Ah, that's
Yes,
good.
well, that is exotic, yeah.
yeah.
And Brian Remain, I'm still here.
Oh, well done, Brian.
Ah,
Well
that's
done.
good.
Well done.
That's
Brian's
good,
just
Brian.
down the road, so
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
a local man.
Yeah, so that's one.
Yeah.
And Harvey Montague from Lewisham.
Ah, Harvey.
That's good. That's
Tall
good.
Harvey.
Tall Harvey.
Welcome, Harvey.
You're a regular as well now,
Yeah.
Harvey. That's
Very
great.
good. So we're going to go live soon?
Yeah, about...
I mean, we are live.
Well, we are live now. We're going to go live.
We're going to go live.
We're going to go formally live. This is
Formally.
informally
Informally
live.
live. Okay.
This is just to kind of warm people up
Yeah.
to our presence.
I think that's officially warmed
Do you
up.
think so?
Probably.
Yeah.
Shall we make a start?
Let's make a start.
One of
I
our
think.
clocks, anyway. We've got two clocks. One of them says that it's 7 o'clock. The
Yeah.
other one says it's not quite.
Mm.
Anyway, let's
Yeah.
make a start. So welcome to sort of part 2, really, of what Maitreyabandhu and myself, Jnanavaca, we've been starting to do. But first of all, let me just say I hope you're well. I hope you're well, and I hope that friends and family are well. Although I'm hearing more and more stories of people not being well.
Yes, indeed.
So if you are unwell or your loved ones are unwell, I just hope that this helps. Well, I hope all of our Dharma teaching helps. I was saying last week that in a way, whatever state we're in, it does seem to be quite a range, doesn't it, of some people finding the lockdown relatively easy and other people finding the lockdown difficult, but also then coping with sickness, and the strain of sickness, and maybe even bereavement, although I hope that hasn't happened to you. So in a few moments, we'll meditate. But I just wanted to do a little recap on what we did last week, because we're just going to keep we're building on it, we're telling a story. And last week, Maitreyabandhu was saying that parables or stories or myths are one of the ways in which the Buddha communicated, and they're really, really important. because a good parable or a good myth or a good story is timeless and it's universal. So it'll speak to all of us in any situation, or at least we can find meaning in it.
Yeah.
And I think you were saying last week that you can keep discovering more and more in a parable. I don't even know if parable is the right word, but you can keep discovering more and more. They're alive, actually. Stories are alive. And what we're going to be trying to do, is discover meaning, relevance for us now in this story. The story that we've been exploring is the parable of the burning house, which is a parable told in the White Lotus Sutra, a very well-known and influential Buddhist sutra, the White Lotus Sutra. And in it, the Buddha tells this story of a man, a wealthy man, with many, many children, all of whom are playing in this vast, crumbling mansion that he owns. And what they don't realize is that while they're playing, the house is on fire. So this immediately, fire is such a potent symbol, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of well, it's danger, it's death, but it's also transformation. It's when we chant the dedication ceremony, we say there's a fire, a wall of fire surrounding the mandala through which you pass to be purified to enter into the mandala. It's a purification of all of our, I guess, our worldliness, all of our sense of
Or foolishness, I think.
our foolishness and all of our selfishness, I guess. So fire is a symbol of purification, not just in Buddhism, in all sorts of cultures. But the house is on fire. That also is a very potent symbol of danger, that we're in danger. And the Buddha's story is saying that it's not my house or your house that's on fire, it's the whole world is on fire. Samsara is on fire, the cosmos is on fire. We're always in mortal danger. That's what he's trying to say. And like children, we're playing, ignoring the flames around us. Sort of, we seem to be programmed to ignore it. Maybe it's a survival thing, but we go on playing our games. And our games are games of, well, I don't know, you can think of games of egotism, of power, of pettiness, of jealousy, of I want this, I don't want that, I don't want you to have this, I want what you've got, competitiveness, silliness, holding on to resentment, games of blame, games of I'm hard done by, narratives that we limit ourselves by. All of that is symbolized by these children playing games. They're preoccupied with trivia compared to the situation that they're in, the situation that we're in, this existential situation of being alive, knowing that we're mortal, we're finite, the body is anyway. Compared to that, most of what I do, hopefully not all, but most of what I do, in that cosmic existential context, it's trivial. It's trivial. Last week I was talking about literally playing a game, but that doesn't do justice to it. In the, even the things that I take very seriously and think are very important, from a perspective, from the perspective of death, they're not very important, a lot of them. I think one of the things that this lockdown, not just the lockdown, but the whole crisis, the pandemic, we don't even have a proper word for it, this situation. One of the things I've heard that it's doing for people is making some people, and maybe you, question why were we putting so much time and energy into some of the things that we were doing? Particularly, I think, career is often a game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Of
Status
and whatever.
certainly is okay.
Anyway, the kids are playing a game. The house is crumbling. That's interesting because I was talking last week about samsara is crumbling. It has maybe a sort of veneer, a sheen of looking pristine, but it's always rotting. The timbers are always rotten in that it's not a secure foundation. There isn't anything secure. And I think, again, that's being exposed now.
It's interesting because it's a mansion, so it can look very gorgeous on the outside.
Yeah.
But,
And all the wealth that the man has, the elder has, you can't stop the house from crumbling. You certainly can't stop the fire. Now he's outside the house. That was the other thing. He's outside the house, and he wants to rescue his children. There's 30 odd children. The house is also haunted. I'm not going to repeat everything about the parable, but the ghosts, we were saying, are the ghosts. Well, we could think of them as the views, the stories we tell ourselves and the culture around us tells us, that keeps us trapped, that keeps us small, that keeps us from living fully our potential, realizing our potential for enlightenment, for Buddhahood. Anyway, the house is haunted. The elder doesn't know how to get the kids out. He can't drag them out one by one. There's not enough time. There's too many of them and only one of him. And he doesn't know what to do. So that's where we left it last week. And that's where Maitreyabandhu is going to pick up from in a few moments. This parable that sort of, maybe it's always relevant, but it feels more and more relevant now.
Yeah. Or its relevancy is sort of highlighted at the moment.
It's highlighted at the moment, yeah. So before we go on to looking at how the story unfolds, we're going to meditate for a bit. And I'll lead us in just a few minutes. It'll be 5-10 minutes of sitting. I'll ground us in our experience of the body and of the breath. But then I'd really like us to imaginatively open up to the suffering of the world. I think one of the things that stories do is connect us with our imagination, and I think our imagination at the moment needs a positive direction. We can read endless things about the virus and how it's spreading and what the acceleration is in different countries, etc., etc. But actually, I think what we need is imaginative, empathic sympathy with the world, with everybody. Metta, it's an act of imagination. That, I think, is useful. Useful is not the right word. It's valuable. It's growthful. And whereas reading endless stories about the rate of acceleration, the rate of etc., has only a limited value. There's not much we can do there. Each of us individually, anyway. So let's settle down. So if you can make sure you're comfortable, however you're sitting, make sure that you're comfortable as you can be. Try and have your feet flat on the ground if you're sitting on a chair, or if you're sitting on a meditation stool or cushions. See if you can just contact the sensations of your feet on the ground. The sense of the ground, the earth beneath us, supporting us, taking the weight of our body. And let's begin by just taking a couple of deeper breaths, a few deeper breaths. And particularly as you breathe out, imagining that you're breathing out a sigh of relief. Imagining a softening in the body with each out-breath. And softening the face, bringing awareness to your face, the muscles around your eyes and mouth. Imagining your forehead, your brow becoming smooth, and the eyes just resting, even sinking back in their sockets. The jaw softening. As you soften the face and bring awareness to that, it's as if tension in the whole of the body can melt. And bringing awareness to the shoulders. See if you can let go of the shoulders a little bit more. And even if you can't let them go, just bringing awareness to how they feel will have an effect. And coming down into the legs with your awareness. Imagining the legs becoming heavy and soft. The muscles inside the legs, in the thighs, loosening. No need to hold on in the legs. The belly, the stomach and the region of the stomach. Bringing awareness to any sensations you can feel inside the belly. Movement of the belly as the breath flows through you. And looking for a sense of spaciousness in the body, imagining spaciousness in the body, in your mind. As if your body is filled with the clarity of awareness and the spaciousness of the mind. And following your breath without forcing it in any way for a few breaths. Imagining the breath filling the whole of the body, not just the lungs, but flowing through, filling the whole of the body. And noticing how you feel in your heart, the heart center. Whether there are any emotions present. looking for a sense of sensitivity in the heart. Reminding ourselves of the connection we have with each other, with all that breathes. People all over the world. In so many different states of being, and many of them in states of suffering. Breathing with them, with metta. The old and the young, the sick and the well, the living and the dead. Wishing them well. Staying in touch with your own breath and the preciousness of the breath, of life. And then for a few moments, just letting go of trying to do anything. Just sitting in awareness of your experience. For a few moments longer. Good. So I hope that helps you arrive in your body, in your experience. And as you sort of meditate every day, hopefully you are meditating every day, I'd really encourage you to spend, whichever practice you're doing, really spend some time just tuning into, well, what we've just done, the body, but also how you feel, and then tuning in imaginatively to people, the world around us. Whichever practice you're doing, whether it's mindfulness of breathing, metta, just sitting, or you may have some other practices. I think that it's very, very important to keep aware of that sensitivity in us, that metta, that connection that we have with each other. Yeah. Very good. So hopefully you're comfortable. I'm going to hand over to Maitreyabandhu to, in a way, just see what you want to draw out, either from, I've missed things out, so you might want to say something about the story so far, but also to take it further. Yeah.
Yes, I quite like to go to the pause with this, the elder, who is clearly the Buddha, outside of the mansion, that, as you say, is looks gorgeous probably from the outside, but is actually crumbling. It's haunted. I was rereading the sutra this morning. It's also filthy, interestingly. There's also animals and beetles in it and all that sort of thing. But it looks lovely from the outside. So you've got this situation with the elder outside and the children inside. I wanted to just pause a little bit over this, his thinking about what to do. Yeah? So the first thing he wanted, you mentioned this last week, was that what I need to do is I was going to run in and grab one, pull them out. That's the best thing. Just as any father, just as any mother would do. I'm just going to go and run in. Doesn't matter about danger to me. Grab a child.
Just instinct.
Just instinct. You know, that's his first thought. And that's. I was thinking you could think of that as redemption through religion. That what religion easily wants to do is, I'll save you. You just believe what I think. I'll, if necessary, even come and grab you. You know. It just shows you that any genuine spiritual life, even religious life, has to be your decision, completely voluntarily, with nobody coming to grab you, oracally. So I think that first thought is redemption through religion. I'll just can save you, whether you like it or not, frankly, whether you believe in me or not. I'm just going to come and pick you up and save you. And you can see that religion has often tried to do that. Disastrously, but sort of understandably, from the personal point of view. We have the answer, you don't, I just need to pick you up and save you. Yeah? So that, I think, is redemption through religion.
And he realises it's not possible.
Yeah, realises it's not possible. And that's what that's saying, is that it has to be from your side. So he can't pick you up. It's very absolute classic Buddhism that the Buddhas can only point the way. They can't save you. In technical language, it's not a soteriology. It's not a religion of salvation in the obvious sense, at least. But the other thing, looking at the sutra, he said, "Oh, I wondered whether I could save them with a bench or a table." In fact, there's also a flower pot. And I couldn't get the flower pot. Perhaps it's a translation thing. I was thinking about that, the bench or the table. Presumably they might
They want things, don't they?
Well, I was wondering whether presumably the metaphor there is that why don't I go in, get some large thing like a bench and table, get them on it, and try and take a lot out at the same time. Do you see what I mean? This is what I was thinking. Grab a bench, get them all, I don't know how you'd quite do it because you need somebody else, but it's a parable. Grab a bench, get as many children on as possible, take them all out. So I was thinking that might be redemption through politics, with the idea perhaps being that the way to help people in this deepest sense of helping them escape a burning house. I'm not suggesting that politics isn't valid, and important it is, and it's too easy to be sniffy about politics and so on, and you know, want nothing to do with it. That's too easy. But I think it might be saying you can't save people as a group. You can't save them as a kind of club or as a right wing or a left wing, or it's not a political answer that the Buddha's got. He can't go in with a bench, get you all on a bench, back bench, lift you up and take you out of the house. In the parable, it's clear that there's only one door, and it's too narrow to take the bench out or the table out. Yeah? So whatever Buddhism turns out to be, it's not primarily about group identities and group affiliation, and therefore not at least from a certain point of view, not about a political solution. There are politics can do wonderful things, can also do terrible things. But yes, you could think of that table, that bench, as redemption through politics. Now, what you end up with, of course, is children there. So the other possibility, which actually I think is very clever's the wrong word for parable, but very beautifully undercut if you think the images through, is redemption through personal development. So it could start to look like, so it's not redemption through religion, I'm not going to pick you up and save you. It's not redemption through politics, I'm not going to get you all to vote one way, I'm not going to create some kind of policy, which you all follow, and then you'll be out the house. I'm not going to redeem you through politics. But it then starts to look like, okay, so Buddhism's redemption through personal growth. Yeah? I think probably for Buddhism, that's in a certain sense the greatest danger, because people easily think that's what Buddhism is, especially as Buddha come to the West. But what's crucial in the metaphor is that the children are in the house and the Buddha isn't. We touched on this, didn't we, last week? That the children are in the house and the Buddha isn't in the house. So that's a metaphor for something beyond your world, beyond itself as metaphor. We might touch on to, it gets deeper and deeper as you look at it. The Buddha's not literally beyond the house, because then he becomes God, but he's not in the house either, otherwise it does become redemption through personal development, you know, being nicer, being better. Personal development's a good thing, often a very good thing, and a lot of people could do with it. It easily is an infinite regress.
It doesn't get you out of the house.
It doesn't get you out of the house. It sort of decorates the house a bit, makes it a nicer place.
Within it,
you grow within it, yeah, but it doesn't get you out of the house. And I think because it doesn't get you out of the house, it doesn't really address the situation you're in. It does to a degree, and it improves the kind of games you play, and might be another way of playing with that idea, but it doesn't really address the situation you're in. And the situation you're in, the situation I'm in, is a crucial situation that I'm alive now, and all I know is one day I'm not going to be alive. I don't know. I know that for certain. It's the only thing I know for certain. It's the only thing we know for certain, that I'm going to die. We actually don't know what we mean by that, but we know that I'm not going to be alive in the way that I experience myself now, and I don't know when that's going to happen. You could hardly have a more dangerous situation. You know, you will die, and I'm not going to tell you when. Could be now, could be tomorrow, could be a long time away. That is like a dangerous place. That is a house on fire that you're in. Yeah? What a wonderfully accurate image for our life. And what we're doing in the midst of that is we're playing games, and as you said, they're games of status, they're games of prestige. It's interesting, they seem to be games that we're born with in some way. I remember talking to a girl, my partner's children when they're young, and you know that time with children where they start practicing having opinions. And I remember Alex saying to me, Maitreyabandhu, do you have a hairband? And I said, no, I don't. She said, I've got a hairband. And so many of our games are basically saying, I've got a hairband. You know, I'm important. I've got a hairband. You know, so often we don't really. I mean, children are a wonderful metaphor, because emotionally and humanly, we often don't grow up much beyond 8 or 9. We're still saying, I've got a hairband, except for we're doing in a meeting saying, well, I've got 3 points here, or I'm disagreeing with you because I've read the Google research on that, and the wave is not like that. It's all basically, I've got a hairband. It's children's games of, I'm important, I'm more important than you, you're important, you know. Everybody does it, we all do it. It's immature, it's not bad. That's another thing that's crucial about this. They're children. And the metaphor of children is just completely right, isn't it? That we're immature. So the Buddhist vision of humanity is not saying there are children and there are mad people in the house. There's children and there's ghosts and animals. But humanity itself are children. They're not mad people, they're not sort of inhuman things in that literal sense. They're children, so they're immature, yeah? They're immature. It's the Buddha saying, you're immature, I'm immature. That's being human, it's being immature.
It doesn't sort of judge that, does it?
No.
It's sort of natural.
Yes, that's right, and it doesn't sort of, it just says, well, that's just, you're immature. What would you expect? You're not grown up yet. It also says you can grow up.
Yes, there's potential.
There's potential, and what Buddhism is saying, what the fact that the Buddha's not in the house is saying, is that potential goes far beyond what you think. It's not just that you'll get to be an adult. Yes, you can get, even being an adult is, frankly, sometimes a bit of an achievement, but you can become a Buddha. And you've got that potential now, because as we mentioned last week, the children are the elders' children. So there's something in their blood and their birth that's related to, in a bloodline with the Buddha. So they might be children, but they've got something within them, even as children, you can see children, don't you? They've got something in them of wisdom. something of the Buddha. So there you go. You've got these three thoughts he has: to save, to redeem through politics, or to redeem through personal development. None of which is enough. Yeah. So obviously, what he thinks next is, what am I going to do? So what he thinks is, I'm just going to call them. I'm just going to say, you're in great danger. You're in great danger. Get out now. The house is burning. Get out now. And like all great parables, and I do think this is actually a great parable, in the sense that by that I mean, it's a story that you can keep turning over in your mind, and it gathers the intimacies of your life and your human situation and keeps on deepening. The children, they carry on playing games. I was remembering actually when I was young, I come from a very large family and with lots of children. And I remember at Christmas, we'd be all sitting, the adults would be sitting around, being adult and frankly rather dull, and all the children would suddenly run through with the dog following them, and then you'd hear them clatter upstairs, and they'd all scream and giggle and all run through again, it's a lovely image for what human beings are like. They're just involved in their games. Of course, adult games are much more complex in a certain way. But what the children do is that it's interesting because they do hear the call occasionally.
They even glance.
They glance.
Glance.
And in the sutra it says glancing now and then.
Yeah.
Which, do you see, that's another image for, even though they're children, they've got a touch of something's calling me. Something about my situation is wrong. House on fire. They don't know what fire means. They don't know what house means. But there's something about my situation that's wrong. And there's a sort of solution. Now, even children feel that, and certainly you'll be feeling that at times, that something wrong about the whole thing. And even, as it were, along with that there is a kind of solution. You have an instinct for that. It's not Buddhism saying, I've got the solution. Here he is, the gold figure of the Buddha. It's saying, you know, don't you, that you've got an instinct that there's a way out of this. Because there's a problem, and I have a dim sense of there being one, there's a way out of it. So you glance every so often at the possibility of a way out. And often you glance at the possibility of a way out, and often you hear that call in situations of extremity. When someone dies, when you're in danger, when the facts of life are forced on you. And what I hope slightly from these, as you say, sometimes terrible times, and now I'm hearing stories, you think, oh, I don't know how to respond to that. There's no use getting anxious and agitated. That just makes matters worse. It's difficult not to do sometimes. But you have a sense that there being some kind of solution. So we do all glance occasionally out of the house. And it's interesting, that metaphor, out of this burning, hot, crumbling house into this open space with this elder, with a possibility of a solution to a problem that we only dimly are aware of. That's what the Buddha is saying our human life is like. But I wanted to just say a little bit more about that call, because what's interesting about it is that the Buddha's just telling you how it is. He's just saying, you're in a dangerous situation, get out now. And it's interesting that that's not going to be the call that works next week. Probably we'll go on more and more. It's interesting as we go through it, we keep finding more and we want to extend it. But we'll say a bit more about that next week. But
because they carry on playing the game.
Yeah, they just carry on.
They glance. They even sort of hear him, don't
Yes,
they?
that's right, yeah.
But they don't understand what danger is.
No.
They don't take it seriously. They carry on playing.
And it's very like, isn't it, when you, with children around, you say, no, you need to all calm down now, you need to go to bed. When you're a child, you think, what's the big fuss? It's all fine, I'm having a great time. Why are they suddenly, I don't know, wanting me to calm down, We're like children. It's such an accurate image. We think, well, why is it they making what's this danger thing that he's talking about? Yeah? But I want to finish my little part here, and then we'll go to some questions. So do ask questions. We want to try to make this as interactive as we can as we go along. What I want to finish with for tonight, in terms of the story, is the call itself. I personally really, I don't know whether you do, but I personally really resonate with that. This sense of being called. And this sense of being called from outside yourself. I felt that in my life at times very, very strongly. Not always happily, to be honest, in my case. In as much as I've just wanted to have fun. I've actually, it's not just that we play games, we're invested in our games. We weirdly think they work. We weirdly think it's going to solve things. I just get it, And I'm like you. I've done that, and I do that. I'm invested in the games I play, even the silly, painful games I play. Identified with them. And yet, time to time in my life, I felt called by something, and that calling is from, as it were, beyond me. It doesn't necessarily need to suit me or not. I don't need to think, am I a religious person? Probably not. Am I a spiritual person? Often I think probably not. I don't always know what spiritual means. It so often sounds so flaky to me personally. Might not to you, but to me I've never liked that thought. So religion, that always sounds a bit portentous to me, although I prefer that now than spiritual. But whatever word you use, I definitely have felt and still feel called. And I would imagine that you do, that you sort of do want to get on with your games, but you something's nagging at you. Someone's calling you. You have a sense of it, and you glance at it every now and then, perhaps particularly at times like this.
For me, I've sort of had that call from an early age, but for a long time, carried on playing the games. I mean, I'm still playing them, but I've carried on playing them overtly because I didn't know what to do with that call.
Yes, yes, of course.
I didn't really, because it is outside of the known. It's outside of my known world. What do you actually do with it? Whereas the world is so tangible, saying, do this and you'll get rich or successful or popular, or that's so tangible. Then you have this call that says, no, there's something far more important, and that worldly stuff is well, it doesn't work, and you're wasting your time playing something silly in a dangerous world. But then what do you do? Well,
also that makes me wonder about conditions. Like some people hear the call, but they're in conditions it's almost impossible to do anything with it, to make sense of it. The conditions that they're in brutalise them or make it impossible to respond to any call. And people around them are saying, what call? Nobody's calling you, don't be ridiculous. What kind of world? You're just making up, it's just your imagination. So do you see how as you explore it, even so much in this parable, I've looked at it so many times like you have. Every time I come back to it, and all of these parables, I think, golly, do you see how they're so accurate? So perhaps we should now, let's start to move towards your questions and your points and see whether we can interact with. I don't know how many people are here just now. Do we know?
So we've got 103 people.
103, that's great. That's really good. That's really good. So I don't know, perhaps this material isn't going to create so many questions as others, but see what questions there are.
Sure. So we've got a question from Tara Green. Do you think the calling from beyond is the Bodhisattva's calling?
Well, thanks, Tara. That would be a way of answering it, except for I don't know what the Bodhisattva is. Now, of course, I'm a Buddhist, so I know what the word means. Jnanavaca might have other things to say. It means a being whose life is dedicated to enlightenment. Bodhi means enlightenment. Sattva means being. So, in my mind, it's rather capitalized. That's a way of talking about it. Every way is a way of talking about it. My own experience is that it's less clear than that. It feels quieter, more mystical. I wouldn't want to give it a name almost.
There's a correction. bodhicitta, not bodhisattva.
Oh, bodhicitta, yes.
Mm.
Again, I feel a bit similar about the bodhicitta. The bodhicitta is supposed to be the, sometimes called the will to enlightenment, not a very good term for it, but again, you're right, Buddhism would use that language, I think. For me, I personally don't relate to it so much. I have the bodhicitta, and it sounds like a thing, like there's a beacon somewhere called the bodhicitta calling me. It's a metaphor for something. That bodhicitta is something inestimably valuable. That there's, as it were, something, metaphor, beyond metaphor, of great value, metaphor, that is calling you, metaphor. Something is in that that's really important, and you have to get it.
And the Buddhist traditions use different metaphors. And you know, like Bhante's used different metaphors. He has used the metaphor of the bodhicitta. He's talked about the Buddha, he's talked about bodhisattva figures, he's talked about the suprapersonal force.
Yes, I was thinking that, yeah.
And there's you know, Buddha nature, absolute reality, our own potential. Lots of ways of talking about that call.
Yeah.
I like the fact that there are lots of ways, because what to me that indicates is, look, none of them we mustn't take any of them as as literal. They are all pointers trying to describe something that can't really be described. And yet it's really important that we take it seriously.
Yes,
so
that's right.
Just because it's indescribable or unpin downable, it doesn't mean that it's not sort of real. I mean, as in that we need to take it seriously. It's the most serious thing. It's the most important thing.
And each metaphor kind of brings out a particular element of that unspeakable, unsayable. You can think of it this way, you bring that element of it forward. But then you think of it, use this metaphor, you bring that element of it forward. You just can't say both at the same time.
Like the very fact that you were talking about the Buddha or the elder being outside the house. Well, another metaphor is that the potential is within us. It's our own inner potential that's calling us. That's another way of thinking about it, because outside and inside are themselves only conceptual, they're constructs. Buddhism has this very sophisticated philosophical analysis which says that every way of talking is talking about constructs. But then it also has, in a way, why these parables are so important, it has this imaginative way of talking that says, look, there's something really important here, and it's a little like this. It's a little like somebody's calling you.
Think of it like this.
And listen to it. Act on it.
A few more questions, I think.
So a question from Richie.
Oh, hello, Richie. Good to see you.
I've had that call from outside the house in my life, and in recent weeks it feels very strong.
Yeah,
Would it be
indeed.
good to react to it now, or wait to see if it's there this strongly after lockdown?
What do you mean by... get Jnanavaca to start talking, but meanwhile, Richie, have a think, what do you mean react to it now? But anyway, you
that's
say
right.
something
I think it's important. I think it's important to listen not to just the call, but what's your response to the call?
Yes.
Do you see what I mean? So if you have this call and you think, oh dear, I don't want to listen to it, then in a way note that as well. It's noted Maitreyabandhu and me saying, follow that calling.
Yes.
You have to also listen to what your, deeper desires are in relation to that call. There's probably a mixture. But I don't know if what you mean by the question is, can I trust it?
Sounds like what you mean, yeah.
Can I trust it now? Or do I wait until after this crisis so that if it's still there, then it's real?
That's what I imagine,
If that's what you're saying, I don't think you can ever know.
No.
You see, I think part of, if that is what you're saying, I'm not completely sure, because it'd be much easier if we could actually talk. But if that's what you're saying, that instinct is because one wants certainty.
Yes, I suppose so, yeah, that's true.
That we want to know that I'm doing the right thing. And I
never know, do you?
I think we can never really know. We can never really be sure. I can remember when I tried to follow that call in the ways, at least to the extent that I have. You know, I decided, for example, that I wanted to give up my job and work for the Buddhist Center. That was me at that time following that call. I didn't know whether it would work out, and there was no guarantee that it would work out. You can't know for sure what that call means for you and whether you can trust it.
Also, I wonder whether you also need to be realistic that, perhaps, you know, in the parable, the children glance at the Buddha. Let's try and glance more often and for longer.
Yeah.
And I think if you start to act on the call, you start to hear it more.
Yes, that's true. Well, you attune yourself to something, and it responds. That's how it feels.
Yes, that's right.
That you become receptive, and then you hear it more. But it's also almost like the Buddha calls more as well.
Yeah.
That's how it feels, and they're only metaphors.
Yeah.
So in a way, we'd have to sort of talk about, if you're talking about how to act, we'd have to talk about, well, is that a good idea or not?
Yeah. And what are you thinking of doing? You know,
doing?
If it's going to be a monk and...
But if you're saying, shall I meditate more? Well, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely meditate more. If you're saying, shall I study the Dharma more? Absolutely study the Dharma more. If you're thinking, shall I take a next step in somehow involving myself in the Dharma life? Well, yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
indeed,
definitely.
yeah. Risk it. It's always a risk. There's no way around a risk.
Yeah.
So Richie clarified, should I trust what I'm feeling is true, or am I somehow just trying to deal with lockdown, pandemic?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah. No, that's very much what you. That's what I imagined you were meaning, Richard.
Yeah.
Let's hear from somebody else. Got two more questions, I think.
Sure. So, well, this chimes with what you were just saying, Jnanavaca. Tracy asks, is this about receptivity, like being spoken to in a language we have to take the time to learn?
Yeah, I think that's right, Tracy. I think that is, receptivity is a way of talking about it. Receptivity isn't, though, the same as passivity or gullibility. It doesn't mean losing a sense of our own responsibility and agency. But nevertheless, there is a certain type of listening to the call, listening to thinking some word, being receptive to what our deeper desires are telling us, our deeper intuitions are telling us about what's important in life. So I think receptivity is something that is very, very important. And as Maitreyabandhu was saying, you train in it. You sort of, you become more receptive through becoming receptive.
I mean, just to add, one simple thing, because even receptivity, you think, how do I do that? You don't do other stuff. You know, you just make a bit of space instead of being on the phone all the time and blah, blah, blah. One thing to do, really simply, is if you're able to, make a bit more space.
I mean, that's what this lockdown, if we manage not to get ill or seriously ill, then what the lockdown offers as a positive is a spaciousness, potentially, for some of us.
Yeah.
I know not everybody's in that situation. Some people are having to work and work very hard. But for some of us, we've got more space in our lives, more than we've had forever, perhaps.
So, similar to that, Kalpana Singh asks, why don't we listen to the call? Is it our delusions?
Kalpana, yes. Hello, Kalpana. I think it's... well, there's two ways of thinking about this. Well, there's a traditional way that says we've got this propensity to just be self-preoccupied that is from lifetimes of delusion, lifetimes of karmic propensity of habit that keeps us playing these games. Another way of thinking about it, maybe more sort of scientific way about thinking about it, is that millions of years of evolution have bred into us a survival instinct and an instinct to look after number one and be safe and secure and fulfilled and then enjoy, pleasures. That instinct is like a biological instinct inbred into us. And it's completely understandable. It's not to be condemned or judged in a harsh way. I think it's natural we are animals at one level.
Yeah.
It's just that if that's all that we do with our lives, if that's the only instinct that we follow, and we don't listen to the call, then we remain children.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot weighted against listening to the call.
Yeah.
A heck of a lot.
And it's interesting because you'll see later on next week we'll carry on with the parable, and the children have to come out from their own volition.
Yeah.
They can't be taken out.
Yeah.
They can't be grabbed.
Yeah.
So what that I think is saying is that Buddhism's vision of changing the world is changing it consciousness by consciousness.
Yeah.
That the most important part of the world
Yeah.
that has the greatest consequences is this tiny space
Yeah.
called me. And if anything starts to change you, that's changing the world.
Yeah.
But it has to be person by person, consciousness by consciousness, voluntarily leaving the house.
Yeah.
But you need to be called. You are being called.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that, actually.
Yeah.
And there's, as you were saying, there's lots of different Buddhist metaphors for that.
Yeah.
Even call is a metaphor, of
Yeah.
course.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you know what we mean by that.
Yeah.
One more, yeah.
So Paul Cooper
Hi, Paul.
asks, what would you say the distinguishing features of a genuine experience of the call are?
Oh, goodness.
Very good question.
I mean, I think different people have very, very different experiences. But I think that one feature of it is a deep knowing that this is true. It has a sort of authenticity to it. On the other hand, that's difficult to... You have to be receptive to that knowing as well. So it's slightly circular. But I think there's a sense that, yes, this is true. Now, that can still go wrong, can't it?
Yeah, I guess so, you can.
Because religions all religions will say they're true. I think one of the things that Buddhism says is don't just trust your call, the call. You have to keep responsibility for your life. So then you can listen to the call, and you can try out in your life something of what the call is calling you to. But then you have to keep evaluating and say, did that work? And is that in line with my reason, for example?
Yeah.
So if you're called to jump off a bridge, because you're going to fly and be saved, that doesn't sit with your reason. So don't give up on reason, for example. Don't listen to anybody that says, ditch your reason. Don't ditch your responsibility, your responsibility for your own actions. Don't do anything that's going to harm yourself or others, explicitly, implicitly, in any way. And then try it out. So there's a risk, but you have to sort of be sensible about risks.
Yeah, you've got that risk, and then you've got your critical faculty.
Yeah.
People in spiritual and religious circles easily are foolishly gullible.
Yeah.
Now, you don't want to be, your critical faculty doesn't want to run your life, because you'll never get anywhere with that. Because your critical faculty tends to, mind us anyway, break things down into little bits and then say, where's the meaning and all that.
Right.
That's what the critical faculty does.
Right.
But ditching it is just ridiculous. You have to do this strange balance between trusting that there's meaning and value calling you, and bringing your critical faculty to bear on it when it's needed, when it's apposite. And sometimes actually saying, no, now is not the moment for this. If you're listening to beautiful music, no, now not the time to bring in your critical faculty. It's a difficult balance, I think, because on its own, the critical faculty will just ride roughshod. Well, from my experience anyway, ride roughshod over your life, break up anything to value and say, look, it's all broken, doesn't mean anything. You definitely don't want that, do you? Also, but you don't want gullibility, fakeness, and as you say, some people feel called to do things that are terrible.
Try the practices. I think try meditation. Well, I know you do meditate, but keep taking the next step in your practice and then seeing, did that work? Evaluate, and then talk to others. Again, if we could talk about your experiences, then we'd sort of be able to go deeper with that. Yeah.
Perhaps we should start to wind
We
up.
should wind up. So I'm sorry not
We
to
haven't-
get to more of your questions. In a way, there's so much here to unpack, and it's
so
a bit,
rich, isn't it? When we go into it, it's so rich.
And there we are asking for your questions, and then we're not able to get to them. So I'm sorry about that. But we are going to keep coming back to this story. There's more to unfold, at least for another week.
And
if
then
not
we'll probably
more,
tell a
and then we'll
story.
tell another story.
Yeah.
So keep, one more thing, read the White Lotus Sutra. If you can get hold of the White Lotus Sutra, read the story for yourself, or read Bante's commentary in, what's it called? The Drama of Cosmic Enlightenment. The
by
Drama of
Sangharakshita.
Cosmic-
When we say
Cosmic-
Bhante, we mean Sangharakshita is the founder of our
The Drama of
movement
Cosmic
order.
Enlightenment, that's where he goes into it.
Yeah. It's
So
wonderful.
for now, I'd like us to finish with a ritual as we've been doing the transference of merit and self-surrender. Before I do that, our usual appeal to your generosity really. If you can give, please do give some money to the LBC. Some of you have already given, in fact many of you have already given, so thank you for that. If you can give a monthly donation, that's going to be even more valuable to us, particularly at a time like this when we're in a lot of uncertainty and yet we're trying to keep the centre going as best we can in some form or other. So if you can give a monthly donation, that'd be fantastic. But if you can just give whatever you give, actually, no matter how small it is, just a one-off. I think the value of giving, even if it's just a pound or 50p or giving something, the value of that is bigger than the monetary value might imply. There's a value of sharing, of feeling part of a community. That's what we're trying to do. And generosity, just a gesture even, makes you feel connected. And I think when we're not able to be
Less
together,
passive.
connection is so important. It's a shame to just feel alone. Giving connects us. So I'd urge you to give, even if it's just a few pence or a pound or whatever. But if you can give more, if you're in a position to do that, and if you can give monthly, that would be really, really helpful. At all sorts of levels. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So let's finish with the transference of merit and self-surrender. So we'll do this in call and response. And Maitreyabandhu and Seb, who's here, will be responding as I speak, and then we'll leave it there. Good. May the merit gained
May the merit gained
in my acting thus
in my acting thus
go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings.
My personality throughout my existences,
My personality throughout my existences,
my possessions,
my possessions,
and my merit in all three ways.
and my merit in all three ways.
I give up without regard to myself,
I give up without regard to myself,
for the benefit of all beings,
for the benefit of all beings,
just as the earth and other elements
just as the earth and other elements
are serviceable in many ways
are serviceable in many ways
to the infinite number of beings,
to the infinite number of beings,
inhabiting limitless space.
inhabiting limitless space.
So may I become
So may I become
that which maintains all beings,
that which maintains all beings,
situated throughout space,
situated throughout space,
so long as all have not attained
so long as all have not attained
to peace.
to peace.
See you soon.
See you soon.